Everyone wishes they could go back in time and buy Bitcoin at $100. But what if I told you got one last shot to get it right? You guys can take a look right here. On the 26th of May, 2013, Bitcoin was worth $133, and right under it is Litecoin worth $3. If we take a look at the price of Litecoin today, it is sitting at $100 at rank 26. And in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly why you might have a second chance at buying Bitcoin at $100. So let's get straight into it. Over here, you guys can see an article written by Gemini, how Litecoin is the silver to Bitcoin's gold. If you guys weren't around in 2021 and 2017, you guys wouldn't know this, but this is pretty much the narrative that got Litecoin to shoot up to $400 when it was just at $4 in one cycle. And here's the reason why people have touted it as the silver, is because it was better suited for payments to serve as a complement to Bitcoin's more natural utility as a store of value. So I imagine this cycle, as Litecoin begins to increase its dominance, this narrative is going to come floating back around, which is going to help with its price performance later into the year as price begins to appreciate. On top of that, we have some very encouraging news coming out with companies adding Litecoin to their treasury as well. We've seen this happen with Bitcoin, and the latest is May Pharma, which has raised $100 million to launch a Litecoin treasury strategy, becoming the first publicly traded company to hold Litecoin. So you guys can already see the narrative bubbling a little bit right now. It hasn't completely boomed, but it's definitely there as Litecoin's price has remained resilient throughout the past couple of years. If we take a look at Litecoin's chart, it has boomed from $4 back in 2015 all the way to $363 in the 2017 cycle to come back down to about $20 and then do it again in 2021, going to $400. And recently, the lowest it's fell to was about $54 with a ranging sideways move for the past 3 years, getting coiled up and ready to move on higher and higher and potentially break all-time highs and actually start to compete with the top crypto projects that are sitting at multi-billion valuations. If we just take a look at Ethereum, it's at 428 billion, XRP's at 200 billion, and then we've got BNB at 106 billion. And back in the day, Litecoin was number 2. It has definitely fallen down as time has gone on, but I think it's time for it to make a comeback and actually climb up the ranks and potentially enter the top 10 rank once again, which is why this is a golden opportunity for those of you who missed Bitcoin in the early days to actually grab a piece of the pie with Litecoin sitting at $100 and potentially shooting for four-figure Litecoin. And that's right, I said four-figure Litecoin because I think what we have coming here is going to surprise many, many people. If you guys didn't know, we have analysts predicting that the ETF for Litecoin, which is coming out in October, has been raised to 95%. And this was published just 2 weeks ago on July 1st. So we have a 95% approval rate for these three coins so far, which is why I think Litecoin is going to see some institutional inflow, as this cycle has been led by institutions mainly, with them bidding Bitcoin. But with the introduction of a spot ETF, I would not be surprised to see Litecoin pull some crazy numbers, along with the narrative we're seeing that Litecoin is a silver, on top of companies adding Litecoin to their treasury. Now, on top of these fundamentals, I'm going to share some charts with you that is going to show you what is possibly coming Litecoin's way. Now, I've talked about XRP, and I want to compare XRP to Litecoin because they have some very, very similar charts, and it makes it very interesting to predict where the price might go. So if we compare them side by side, so on the right hand, we have XRP, and on the left, we have Litecoin. Now, if we compare the two, you can see they had pretty similar charts. Litecoin pumped on the right-hand side to about $360, and then XRP did the same to about $3 back in 2017, and then it dumped very similarly to Litecoin. Then we had a pump on XRP back in 2021, similar to Litecoin, but Litecoin actually performed better, getting above the high of the previous cycle, whereas XRP didn't. Now we have XRP leading, with it actually breaking the high and pushing even higher. But what do we have on Litecoin? We actually have it lagging. So we are in this phase of Litecoin's current cycle where this move hasn't actually manifested yet. So what we're expecting to see here is actually a break of the top, which takes us above $400. So that's about a 4x move for Litecoin back above $400, which would put Litecoin above Doge right there in position number 7, with more room to run as it follows the structure of XRP because it has the fundamentals behind it. It just hasn't had the move yet. Not everything's going to move at the same time, which is probably why we're seeing LTC lag, but the structure is there. It's looking amazing. It held extremely well during the early 2025 crypto dump that we had, and it went down to 64, held the lows, and now it's seen pumping again with the latest news coming out. So I think we're going to see Litecoin pump. It still hasn't performed on the BTC side. So let me show you what I mean by that. Over here, if we go to the LTC BTC chart. All right, so here we have the Litecoin Bitcoin pairing. And as you guys can see, it hasn't really done too well over the years, which is why the price has stayed stagnant. However, this is what really moves the needle on the Bitcoin price. The only reason Litecoin has gone up a little bit is because Litecoin BTC has held steady while Bitcoin has been pumping. So it's pumping on the USD side. However, if we get a move towards the upside like we saw back here, then we'll see Litecoin's price actually skyrocket towards the upside. And the good news is on the BTC pairing, if we simply head towards that orange line and Bitcoin gets to 250K, this puts Litecoin's price at about $2,000. So we don't need that huge of a pump to actually get above these highs to see Litecoin skyrocket. We simply need Litecoin to head to next major resistance, which is around this area. We're going to draw a little bit of a rectangle right there. This is the next major area of resistance. So this would put Litecoin's price at $2,000 per Litecoin just to get up there. And that's not too much of a pump on these pairs. You guys can see it's about a 700% pump. If we go to XRP and see what it's done in the past couple of months, you guys can see that's a 200, 300% move, and the cycle's not over yet. It's probably got more juice left in the tank. Although this chart objectively is a little bit better than the LTC chart simply because it has held its value over time with Bitcoin. It hasn't outdone Bitcoin, but it has held it and currently looking to outdo Bitcoin. So Litecoin has some work to catch up with, but it's not that far of a pump. We're talking about a 7x on an asset that's at rank 26, whereas XRP was sitting at rank 3, I believe, and now it's pumping up to catch up with Bitcoin. So I think Litecoin's going to have its time. The chart looks primed on Litecoin. You guys can see the trend line is holding over there. The wedge doesn't really exist over here. It's more so that we have resistance at the $100 line. So Litecoin is currently sitting at $100 resistance as it's psychological, but once we begin moving towards the upside, we've already taken it at once, which makes it a lot weaker, and the orders and the sellers that were there previously are gone now, so we're going to actually be able to sustain it. You guys can see last time we got to 140, we also sold off back here, which is probably why we sold off here. So the next target after we get above this 110, 150 level is going to be this level right about there at about 289. Once we crack that, it'll be smooth sailing above 380 to actually start targeting these higher numbers. After that, obviously we have $1,000 on the table for resistance, and then as we begin moving to the upside, the next normal psychological levels are going to be 1,500 and 2,000. I do think we have a potential of getting to $2,000 on this simply because the LTC BTC chart shows that the next big resistance on this chart is about $2,000 if Bitcoin gets to 250K, which is what I'm assuming Bitcoin will do. You guys can see we rejected here multiple times when attempting to break out. We got one rejection there, a second rejection there. So I would expect that we would try and break this level, but we wouldn't succeed, which would put Litecoin at that 2K. So that is $2,000 per Litecoin when it's currently sitting at $100. That's a 20x with size on a coin that you can have conviction as companies are adding Litecoin to their balance sheets. We've got an ETF coming, and we've got a strong narrative behind Litecoin, and then institutions who are increasingly getting involved with crypto. So everything is lined up for Litecoin to have a huge run, and you can have a second opportunity to actually grabbing Bitcoin at $100. And I do think this is going to happen extremely fast. I don't think we have that much time. I would say the next 6 months until December, possibly January, where this would take place. I don't think the pump is going to take that long. If you take a look at the past and see how long these pumps took to get to their targets, you'll see that we took 261 days to hit the target in 2017, and then we took 142 days, or you could say from the low right there in 2020 to 21, we took 432 days. And then if we mark the low of 2025 to the end of the year, which is what I'm targeting, we would reach about 284 days. So somewhere in between these two dates, and I think that's very, very reasonable, which is why I'm targeting about January at the latest for this price to actually hit its target to at least 1,000, but on the higher end, $2,000. So far, the chart looks set up like XRP, and we've got everything I've talked about lined up. So I don't think this is going to be too far-fetched for it to happen. So with that said, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.